Hi, my name is Heather, and welcome to 180 Days of Lang, a video series, but I'm imagining you can also just listen to it kind of like a podcast, where I go through day by day what I'm teaching in AP Lang and composition. When I was a first year teacher, I had the benefit of another high school English teacher that could clue me in day by day on what was going on in her freshman class, but when I got to AP Lang, I realized I am making this up as I go along, one day ahead of the kids. So if that's you, or you are just nosy like me and want to know how another teacher does her classes, this is for you. Now, I will say that all of the resources I have, I can share with you. I will post a link to, I organize things by unit, and I will post a link to where you can find everything I'm going to show you today in Unit 1. So my first day of class is actually this icebreaker activity with cereal boxes. So I'll link that video in the description too. And then my second day is kind of just classroom procedural stuff, including setting up binders for AP Lang. And I'll link that video in the description as well. So if you want to go back and watch just those two tutorial videos, the first 2 days of any class are going to be really tailored to the weird first day schedule or your rules or those things. But this is the first true day of content, which for me is day 3 of AP Lang. So over here on the left, you can see the lesson plan that I have for it. And I'm going to first talk about how I prep for the day's lesson. Then I'll get into the procedure, and then we'll talk about any text that we're going to read that day and any writing activities students are going to do. I'm going to keep this a really short overview and just think about it in terms of what are the highlights a new teacher would need to know that's popping into my room like 10 minutes before school starts that needs a little feedback on what's going on that day. So this is a quick rundown of what is actually day 3 of AP Lang in my class. So to get ready for today, I'm going to start students off on rhetorical situation, and I'm going to get a copy of some notes ready. So here's what they look like, and we will come back to these day after day. I do 2 concepts a day, and then the last one on the 3rd day. So I just print off these slides. They're mostly filled out for students, but at the bottom of this, I kind of have my notes on the parts that are not filled out, and we talk about it on the board as we go. So I project this on the board. What's in blue is already filled in, and then we go. So rhetorical situation is the speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence, or the SPACE in Space Cat, if you're familiar with that acronym. And then I will get that ready. I will make copies of our first article. I like this one, 7 Reasons You Don't Need Yoga. That's in the folder as well, but it's just kind of an interesting, ironic play on a speaker and a purpose. That's an interesting way into those concepts. And then the first notebook writing assignment, I'm a paper and pencil girl, but if you prefer to do things digitally, let me show you what it looks like on the digital side. So you can assign this in Google Classroom. This will be something that students will finish your homework today as well. So post it with your homework deadline, or just print out the paper and pencil version. You also might consider, if you've assigned a syllabus for this class, giving a little syllabus quiz. Can't do a full story time here, but I will tell you that having a syllabus quiz and being able to prove that a student was in fact aware of a plagiarism policy came in very handy several months later when I needed it to. So highly recommend. I just do a little like 5 or 10 question Google Forms quiz based on the most important parts of your syllabus about your policy. So you could do that on this day too. So anyway, here's sort of how we go through the lesson. I have students return like a parent or guardian signature form, collect those. Then we're going to distribute those rhetorical situation notes, and we're going to tell them, hey, keep these in your binder. We'll come back to them day after day. So we'll talk about speaker and purpose. And speaker, students are pretty clear on that in terms of an individual, but what I really have to emphasize is sometimes groups are acting as a speaker. So a corporation might issue an apology. Maybe 1 or 2 of their employees messed up, but the whole corporation is apologizing. That could be, an example of that. But speakers are typically individual writers or speakers of those texts that we read. And then I like FAIR diagrams, which is the model that you see here that has the concept in the middle and then the definition, examples, facts and characteristics, and non-examples. I think this helps students kind of really break into these complex concepts. So we'll do our notes on speaker and then move on to purpose. I emphasize to students that some of the most common purposes are to persuade, inform, and convince. The difference between persuasion and convincing: persuasion is like trying to get someone to take action, but convincing is just getting them to change the way they think about a topic. You might also have like to reflect and inspire as common purposes as well. Most of the texts in this class, though, you're going to run into have something to do with like persuading or informing, and maybe a combination of both. So that usually takes about 10 minutes to do the first couple days of notes. And then I give students an article, 7 Reasons You Don't Need Yoga, which is from a local yoga studio. And it basically is 7 bad problems that like middle-aged adults have and how yoga can fix them. But it's like an ironic thing about like, oh, you never struggle to sleep like a baby at night, or those kinds of things. And it reveals the real purpose is to convince you you do need yoga. And the speaker is the person running the studio. So our notebook writing assignment to go along with this one, and again, if you use a different article, you can certainly change this, but something to help students practice the speaker and purpose, I have them pick a speaker and then, have a purpose to convince them to do something, or persuade them to do something, or convince them to believe something. But it has to be in that same style. So it should be called 3 Reasons You Don't Need XYZ. So maybe it's like 3 reasons you don't need to play an instrument. And reason 1 is you hate creativity and never enjoy being creative, right? Well, most people do enjoy being creative sometimes. So it gets the point across ironically in that way. So there are some examples in the teacher guide if you have this resource as well. And then as students have time to work on that, I might model for them. I might write along with them. There's a self-check on the print and digital version of this where they need to make sure that they've hit kind of the goals of the assignment before they turn it in. And then if you are using these resources, this year I've put in a little teacher feedback section to make scoring easier for you as well. So if you have longer classes, you might set a timer for 20 minutes and tell them they have to complete this in about 20 minutes. I think that should be sufficient. And then you can move on to having them think, pair, share, and guess like the purpose or speaker of each of their pieces, which is how I start my day 4 lesson because I teach in 45-minute classes. All right, so just to recap, today's first goal is to get set up with rhetorical situation notes, really dive deep into speaker and purpose, and do our first notebook writing assignment. So setting the expectations for how much writing they should do, where they turn those things in at, making sure everyone's in Google Classroom if you're using that tool or a different LMS. So it looks like there's not a lot time-wise, but this is usually where some of the little procedural things need to be explained or reinforced. New kids are added into your class, schedules are changing. So it starts off a little slow intentionally for a reason there. All right, well, teach on Space Cats, and I hope that was helpful in getting you started in rhetorical situation.